Let me just wait. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We'll now call this morning's proceedings to order. Thank you so much for being on time as we commence this morning's important briefing session. Excellencies, members of the respective diplomatic missions, I recognize the presence of our advisors to the Commission, UNDP advisors, Commonwealth, members of both local and international observers group. Thank you so much for your presence here this morning. With me at the head table this morning, let me introduce the chairperson, Justice Claudette Singh, seated in the middle, the Chief Election Officer, Mr. Vishnu Prasad, our Deputy Chief Election Officer, Mr. Anil Giddens, and to my far left, the Civic and Voter Education Manager, Mr. Nardio Prasad. I would also like to recognize the presence of Commissioner Sis Gunraj. Good morning, sir. Welcome to this very important briefing session. So while we're gathered here this morning, I want to point out that this briefing is being streamed live via our YouTube channel. So for the other observers who couldn't be here, that they're able to benefit from this very important briefing exercise. So let me formally welcome you to this morning's session. It is always a privilege for us to engage with our respective stakeholders. We consider you a very important component of our procedures, particularly in the conduct of elections, and therefore your role is very critical to this process as we proceed to hold elections that are free, fair, and transparent. And of course, your presence is always that very important component in this procedure. I would not want to take up much of the time this morning to tell you a lot in terms of your role, but I'm sure as we get on with today's discussions, you will hear more about how your role will help to enhance this procedure. So, once again, welcome. We're happy to have you with us. And so at this point, I will now invite the chairperson of the commission, Justice Retired Claudette Singh, to deliver some remarks. Justice Singh?
Excellencies, senior technical advisors from the Commonwealth and UNDP, CEO, DCO, Commissioner Gunraj, Civic and Voter Education Manager, good morning to the esteemed international and local observers. I bid you a very warm welcome to this important orientation session. Your presence here today signifies a shared commitment to upholding the principles of democracy and ensuring the integrity of our electoral process. We are delighted in having your presence as we embark on this journey together. As in unity, there is strength. The purpose of this session is to equip you with a comprehensive understanding of Guyana's election processes, from the pre-election preparations to the peri-election conduct and post-election activity. Our goal is to share with you the knowledge and insights necessary to effectively observe every stage, ensuring that the elections are conducted in a manner which is free, fair, transparent, and credible, in compliance with international standards. As observers, your role is paramount. in fostering public trust and confidence in the electoral outcome. Your objective and impartial assessment provides an invaluable layer of accountability, contributing significantly to the democratic health of our nation. Having recognized the immense responsibility entrusted to you, we are committed to providing you with all the necessary resources and support to fulfill your mandate effectively. This, this orientation session will delve into the legal framework governing elections in Guyana, including the Representation of the People Act and other relevant legislation, to ensure you are fully aware of the established procedures and regulations. The officers from our secretariat will also provide you with an overview of the operational aspects of Election Day, from the opening of polling stations to the tabulation of ballots and the declaration of results. Your observation will be critical in identifying areas of strength as well as areas where improvements may be needed, ultimately contributing to the continuous enhancement of our electoral system. We encourage active participation and discussion towards the end of this session. Your insight, your insights and perspectives are highly valued, and we believe that through collaborative engagement, we can collectively ensure a robust and credible electoral process for all the citizens of Guyana. Thank you for your dedication and commitment to democratic governance. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. At this time, I will like to invite the DCO, Mr. Anil Giddins, to give us a presentation. Sorry, okay, so the Civic and Voter Education Manager will take the lead on that.
Good morning, everyone. All protocols being welcome to this orientation for accredited international and local observers. As it says there, I would not go through this for you. That's my welcome to you, esteemed observers, to this orientation session for the upcoming 2025 general and regional elections in Guyana. Your presence here signifies a commitment to ensuring a free, fair, and transparent electoral process, a cornerstone of any democratic society. This orientation is designed to equip you with the necessary information and understanding to effectively carry out your observation duties. We will cover key aspects of the electoral framework, the roles and responsibilities of the observers. The objectives of this session: develop a clear understanding of your roles and the roles of relevant election officials, become knowledgeable about the various electoral processes, and be empowered to conduct efficient assessments of the manner in which the entire process leading up to and including the declaration of the election results are implemented. Our electoral system. Our electoral system is being run under a proportional representation system with elements of geographic and gender representation. Come September the 1st, voting will be done to elect a president and 65 members of the National Assembly. How are these 65 members arrived at? 40 of those members come from what is called the national top-up list, and 25 comes from the geographical representation. Just to let you know that 1/3 of the candidates validly nominated, they must be females. For the 40 members to be elected, the entire country is seen as a whole, and the votes cast using an electoral quota for each political party would then know how many seats they will be awarded in Parliament. For the geographical representation, our country is divided into 10 administrative regions, and we call them geographic constituencies. 25 of the seats in the National Assembly are awarded to those constituencies. For example, in District 4, 7 seats are awarded in the National Assembly. An electoral quota used in each one of those constituencies will then determine how many seats political parties get from each one of those constituencies. Eligibility requirements of a voter, it's very, very simple. You should have been 18 years or older by June the 30th. And most importantly, you had to have been listed on the official list of electors that will be used for these elections. Next slide, please. Election day activities. It is extremely important for the results of the elections to be acceptable to all concerned. For this reason, it is necessary for stakeholders as well as the voters to know exactly what will happen on election day and what happens thereafter. As such, the entire process will be clearly understood by stakeholders and the voters. Polling station. A polling station, it refers to that exact place that the voters will be casting their ballot come September the 1st. It must be noted, however, that that polling station has a boundary, and that boundary is 200 yards around. In some instances, more than one polling stations will be at one location, hence the name polling place. For that 200 yards limit, the police rank who provides support on that day, he or she is entirely responsible for enforcing law and order in that area. There should be no canvassing by political parties and others, and that should not happen in the boundary, of course, and there should be no molestation or interference with an elector. That is entirely prohibited. On that morning, signs will be posted. However, before that, the returning officer would have ensured that there is a notice of poll posted, a copy of each list of candidates that will be contesting the elections, and of course, a copy of the official list of electors for the division or part thereof that that polling station will be responsible for. On the morning, the presiding officer would ensure that the directions for voting, it is posted, the in and out signs are there, the tearing down of the election notice, the maintenance of the secrecy of the ballot, the molestation of electors, and a new one that has come in this time, obstruction and misleading an elector. The opening hours of poll, the Representation of the People Act clearly states that the poll must be open at 6 a.m. and operate continuously until 6 p.m. Next slide. Polling day officials. At every polling station, we're going to find one presiding officer, one assistant presiding officer, one or two poll clerks, depending on the number of electors assigned to that station, and one ballot clerk who, after 6, when the poll would have been closed, would now be termed the counting assistant. For those polling places, to assist electors to meet quickly to their polling stations, we would have one information clerk stationed at the entrance, and they would provide information to voters as to which one of the stations they will be voting. There will be one polling agent per political party, and of course, I told you just now, the police rank. Please note that all the polling day officials will be clearly identified. Who are authorized to enter polling stations? Well, of course, the workers working there are authorized, but who else? The returning officer or the supernumerary returning officer, the deputy returning officer or deputy supernumerary returning officers, election clerks to the ROs and the SROs, members and officers of GCOM and its secretariat, international and local observers, agents and candidates of contesting parties, and police officers. Yes, we do have assisted voting, where someone who requires assistance to vote can ask for such. How is this done? This is done in two ways. An incapacitated voter may be accompanied by another elector, and for that to happen, both of them must be listed to vote at that same polling station. The friend is allowed to vote first, and having voted first, we would then treat with that incapacitated elector. Point to note, both the friend and the incapacitated elector must take the relevant oaths. There is an oath for the incapacitated elector, and there is an oath for the friend to take. Careful note, however, the friend can only vote for one incapacitated elector. The indelible ink. When an elector would have voted, their fingers will be dipped, and in this case, we're saying the right index finger would be dipped in the indelible ink, and this is an indication that that person would have voted. Before a ballot is issued to an elector, the hands are checked to ensure that there are no traces of indelible ink. And what if you find traces of indelible ink? Then that voter would have already voted in the eyes of that presiding or assistant presiding officer, and he or she will not be allowed to vote at that polling station. The 6-digit number. The 6-digit number is that number that is unique to every polling station. Every ballot that is deposited in that particular polling station ballot box must have that 6-digit number. How is it arrived at? Before the opening of poll on that morning, the presiding officer, in a bag that is not transparent, would have written the numbers on slips of paper 0 to 9. The process of drawing one number and going through the process, replacing that until 6 numbers are drawn, will then be done. This time, when we draw the numbers are written from right to left. The 6-digit stamp is then set to reflect that number that is drawn at the polling station. And as I told you, it is unique to that station. Every ballot that goes in the ballot box there has to have that 6-digit number. Next slide, please. The voting procedure. A very, very simple procedure. An elector going to vote on that day, they would first present themselves to the poll clerk, and of course they have in their possession the national identification card. The poll clerk is going to check the national identification card and the official list of electors to ensure that the elector's name appears therein. Poll clerk will then announce loudly the elector's serial number and the name and all the other particulars that are on that list. The national identification card is given back to that elector, and the elector is now directed to the presiding officer or the assistant presiding officer. Point to note that once that voter passes by the poll clerk, a tick is placed against the serial number. The next step, the voter goes to the assistant presiding officer or the presiding officer and applies for a ballot. How is this done? Not by making an application, of course. They hand in the ID card. The ID card will be checked, comparisons made, and once the identity of the elector would have been ascertained, the fingers are checked for traces of indelible ink. None is found. The ID card is returned to the elector. What happens next? The presiding officer or the assistant presiding officer would now write on the counterfoil of that ballot to be issued to that elector the serial number of that elector as it appears on the official list of electors. And mind you, these are 2 elections we have in one. So the serial number will be written at the top for general elections and at the bottom for the regional, general elections, and at the bottom for the regional election. The ballot paper is then detached along the counterfoil. Most importantly, it is stamped at the top for the general election and at the bottom for the regional election. Advice on how to vote is then given to the elector, after which the ballot is folded and the elector is shown having voted how to fold the ballot again. Ballot is delivered, the voter goes into the voting compartment, marks the ballot, folds it back the same way, and then comes back to the ballot clerk. Coming back to the ballot clerk, next slide please. The first thing that happens, the ballot clerk must be satisfied that the ballot that is going to be placed into that ballot box was the one that was given at that polling station. So the elector will have to show the ballot to ensure that the 6-digit numbers are visible. Having seen that the 6-digit numbers are visible, the elector is first asked to immerse his or her right index finger in the indelible ink, and thereafter the aperture of the ballot box is opened, the ballot is deposited, and the voter leaves the polling station. The ink must be allowed to dry naturally. This time around, before the finger is inked, we're asking the elector to ensure that your finger is clean. We have tissue there for that purpose. Ensure that the finger is clean before it is inked. Next slide. What happens if you don't have your ID card? Yes, a valid Guyana passport, or yes, a valid driver's license can be used to assist in your identification. However, once you do not present your national ID card, you will be asked to take an oath of identity. So what happens here now? You're going to present yourself to the poll clerk again. Poll clerk will check for your name. Having found your name, the poll clerk will then direct you this time not to the assistant presiding officer, but to the presiding officer, because you are now termed as a special case. What happens? The presiding officer and the agents, they have in their possession registration folios. On this registration folio, you're going to find your picture, and you're going to find some biographic information there for you that details exactly who you are. The presiding officer would then ask you questions based on the information that is there. And once that presiding officer is satisfied that you are the person who you claim to be, it does not end there. You are asked to take an oath of identity, and once you have taken that oath of identity, you will be issued with a ballot paper and treated as an ordinary elector. Elector voting as proxy. Who are the persons that could have applied for proxy? A member of the disciplined forces who is unable to vote on the day set aside for disciplined forces balloting, but would be involved in election day duties on election day. Election officers who would be working on election day doing election duties away in other districts from the districts in which they are listed. Persons who are working with the Transport and Harbors Department and would be engaged in the operations of running a moving vessel on election day. Persons who cannot go to the polls because they're blind or visually impaired or physically incapacitated. And the last category, a duly appointed candidate who is in another district doing his political party's work on election day. How is this done? Any elector can vote as a proxy. You can be appointed to vote as a proxy for no more than 2 other electors, and we just don't give you appointment of proxy just like that. An investigation is done, and if all goes well, then you'll be given the appointment. Must be noted that the elector at home who is unable to go and vote cannot appoint 2 or more persons to vote on their behalf. And when the proxy goes to vote, they vote for themselves as well as the persons for whom they would have been appointed. What happens now in a polling station if you refuse to stain your finger? If you refuse to take the oath of identity, and if you refuse to answer questions when legally required to do so. If you refuse to take the oath of identity, and if you refuse to respond to questions when legally required to do so, you will not be issued with a ballot paper. On the other hand, if you refuse to stain your finger, having marked your ballot will not be allowed to be deposited in the box. Your ballot will be taken from you, a little tear placed on it. It is now called a destroyed ballot. And of course, an entry is made in the poll book, page 5, that deals with ballot papers refused. Certificate of employment. Who are issued with certificate of employment? A certificate, first and foremost, a certificate of employment, it ensures that someone who is an election official working on election day or a member of the discipline force who is working on duty on election day at a polling station that is a little distance away from the polling station at which he or she is listed to vote. That certificate of employment is given by the returning officer, and an application for such must have been made at least 2 days before election day. It must be noted that not all persons who are working at a polling station at which they are listed will be issued with certificates of employment. If their polling stations are close by, the returning officer will ensure that arrangements are made that when there is a lull in the process, a vehicle is provided for those persons to be whisked off to the polling station at which they are listed to vote, and the arrangements are put in place there to ensure 1 minute. Thank you. And the arrangements are made there when they go to that polling station to ensure that they vote quickly and return back to their office of work. Intermixing. We do have advance voting here. And who are the ones who vote in advance of our elections? They are those persons who we call the non-resident electors, our persons who are listed on the official list of electors and performing duties at our embassies or our high commissions overseas. Who else vote in advance? The members of the Guyana Police Force, the members of the Guyana Defense Force, and the members of the Guyana Prison Services. Come the 22nd, those three police force, defense force, and prison services would be going to the polls. What happens when those ballots come back? When those persons would have voted, they would have placed their ballots in sealed envelopes addressed to the Chief Election Officer. They come back, the Chief Election Officer or his duly appointed representative will now commence sorting of those envelopes. Point to note, every ballot box or every envelope that comes back with either non-resident electors' ballots or the discipline forces ballots, they are accompanied by a ballot envelope account. You know exactly how many envelopes are coming back to the Chief Election Officer. What happens now? After those ballots are sorted, the Chief Election Officer would have already determined the polling stations to which those ballots will be going. Remember, each ballot in Guyana is unique. Unique in a sense that it belongs to a particular district. So if Mr. Jones, who lives in Warramadong and would have voted on D-Day, his ballot comes back to Georgetown, yes, but he would have been issued with a District 7 ballot. His ballot must go back to a polling station in District 7 to be counted. So the ballots are sorted and they are then put into envelopes accompanied by another ballot envelope account and sent off to those polling stations that have been selected for intermixing, and those polling stations will be gazetted. So the members of the public and all knows where votes will be going, where ballots will be going to be intermixed. What happens when they get there? During a lull in the proceedings, the presiding officer We'll open that envelope. It is called a P20 envelope. And accompanying that P20 envelope will be another envelope that's called a P12, in which the ballot envelope account will be found. Opens those envelopes, counts the number of ballots, reconciles it with that which is on the ballot envelope account, opens those envelopes one by one, takes out the ballot, unfolds it without showing for who the person would have voted, and like I would have said earlier, before that ballot can be placed into that ballot box, it is stamped at the top for the general election and it is stamped at the bottom for the regional election. That ballot now becomes a part of the others in that polling station. Close of poll. We did say that poll goes from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. What happens? If at 6 p.m. there is no other person left to vote, the poll is declared closed and the aperture of the ballot box is sealed with a red wire seal. On the other hand, what happens if there are persons in the line left to vote? If at 6 o'clock there are persons still there to vote, they will be afforded the opportunity. However, the presiding officer will ask the police officer to come and stand behind the last person. Officer stands there, he is given the instruction that no other person is to join the line. Presiding officer is going to take the name of the last person, count the number of persons in the line, and go back into the polling station and announce that loudly so that the agents can hear that there are 7 persons remaining to vote, with Marcia John being the last elector. When Miss Marcia John would have voted, the poll will be declared closed and the seal put on the aperture. Ballot paper account. The presiding officer would have received ballot papers, and of course, he or she has to give an account for them. So after poll would have closed, there is a form that is called Form 23 that is known as the ballot paper account. And the presiding officer is going to go through each section of that ballot paper account, go into the relevant envelopes to find the spoiled ballots, to find the tendered ballots, to find the counterfoils and destroyed ballots, and going into each envelope, it will be carefully filled out on that ballot paper account, the different sections that talks about that. Having done all of that, you know exactly the number of ballots that are now present in the ballot box. You take away the ballots that were spoiled. You take away the ballots that were unused. You take away the ballots that are remaining. You take away the ballots that were destroyed. And what you now have, that number represents what is in the ballot box. So we're coming to the important thing now of these elections, the count. The presiding officer will announce the commencement of the count, but before proceeding to the count, he is going to first rearrange the polling station to ensure that the agents are in full view of this count. Next slide, Lizzie. The ballot box will be opened. Its contents would be emptied on a table for all to view. Next slide. Tally sheets will be distributed. And just to remind them, the presiding officer will go back quickly what he means when he says tally the vote. Tally sheets would have been given to all the officers, including the agents there. Having gone through that, the ballots will then now be unfolded, face downward, and placed in batches of 25. Very quickly, you are going to reconcile that with the number that you had calculated on the ballot paper account. Your ballot paper account is now completed. Next step, because we're having two elections in one, general and regional, we are going to detach the general election ballot from the regional election ballot, maintaining that batch of 25. Presiding officer is going to pick up a ballot, show to all present that yes, that ballot was issued at that polling station by showing them the official mark at the back, and then will call out loudly the name of the party for which the vote was cast. 1 minute. So the back of the ballot is displayed, the front of the ballot is displayed, and a tally is made against the name of the political party for which that ballot was awarded. Agents are afforded the opportunity to object. When the agents object, the presiding officer's decision still holds, but because it would have been objected to, a Q is marked at the back of the ballot, and that presiding officer is going to place his initials. As the count go on, the ballots are placed in separate stacks for the different political parties. If there needs to be a ballot that has to be rejected, it is rejected and it is placed in another pile. At the end of the count, we count the votes cast for each party. We verify that total on the tally sheets, and all the tally sheets should be saying the same thing. We place the votes counted for each party into separate envelopes. We seal those envelopes. We count the rejected ballots. We put them in their own envelope, and in this envelope, we give reasons for rejection. We're going to be coming to that just now. The most important document at the polling station, the statement of poll. The statement of poll is that document that says exactly what happened at the polling station. A statement of poll is prepared for the general election, and a statement of poll is prepared for the regional election. We tackled the general election first because that's the count we did. The number of valid votes cast is recorded for each list of candidates. The total valid votes cast for all lists, the grand total of the number of persons who voted, the total number of spoiled ballots, the total number of destroyed ballots, and the total number of tendered ballots used. For the regional election, the same steps that we went through for the count for the general election, those same steps are done. Having completed the statement of poll, the presiding officer certifies them. And having certified them, all the agents present are offered the opportunity to sign those statements of poll. One copy must be prepared for the returning officer. One copy in the case of districts 3, 4, and 6 must be prepared for the supernumerary returning officer, 1 for the chief election officer, and 1 for the GCOM chairman. The main one that will be prepared there is the one that will be posted outside the polling station in a conspicuous position for all to see. Rejected ballots, you did hear me talking about rejected ballots, and there are 5 reasons by which a ballot can be rejected. It does not have the official mark of that polling station. It has not been marked by the elector for any party. It has been marked by the elector for more than one parties. It has been marked in such a way that the elector can be identified, and it cannot be established for whom the elector has voted. The questioned ballot, I did put it a little bit earlier to you. It is counted for the party or it is rejected depending on the presiding officer's decision. His decision is final at the polling station and the initials are written at the back. Point to note, the presiding officer's decision is final at the polling station, but that decision can be challenged by agents if they ask for a recount after the returning officer would have declared the results. Reporting the results, I did tell you that enough copies will be prepared and certified. 1 is posted outside the polling station. The others are sent to the returning or the supernumerary returning officer, as well as the chief election officer and Madam Chair. The envelopes are sealed, and agents, particularly the P7 and the P8. P7 contains the valid votes for each political party, and P8 contains the rejected ballots. Agents are afforded the opportunity to put their seals on them. And then all of those envelopes are secured and the statements of poll is taken back through the deputy returning officer or through the deputy supernumerary returning officer straight up to the supernumerary returning officer or the returning officer. Ascertainment of results. I would be giving you here a little synopsis. The technical boss behind that, the Deputy Chief Election Officer, would be going through that with you in detail. Very quickly, in the case of Districts 3, 4, and 6, we know that they have been divided into 3, 4, and 3 sub-districts respectively. In those districts, the supernumerary returning officers will be responsible for the ascertainment of the results. And in the other districts, the returning officer is the one who is responsible. Before that is done, it is communicated to the chief election officer, election agents, duly appointed candidates, and the counting agents of the time that this activity will take place. Next slide. For this purpose, this time around, there will be an electronic mechanism that is put in place where each statement of poll will be displayed. All and sundry will have a careful look at it. The votes listed there will then be placed on what is known as the district tabulation or the sub-district tabulation form. Agents are allowed the opportunity to challenge, and we will not move on to the other one unless everyone there is satisfied. At the end, the votes are added up and the total number of votes for each list of candidates is ascertained. That number is placed on the district or sub-district tabulation form. The results are then publicly declared, And in the case of districts 3, 4, and 6, the SROs will then send their sub-district tabulation forms to the returning officers, who will then prepare the district tabulation forms for those districts. Next slide. Immediately after the declaration of the results of the respective districts, those forms would be given to the chief election officer, who would then use them to prepare his final report. However, there may be some persons who are disgruntled with the results, and they are afforded the opportunity to ask for a recount. This must be done, however, by noon of the next day after that declaration would have been made. Next slide. Who can ask for the recount, or what we call the final count? The counting agent or the duly appointed candidate. And of course, they would have to put that request in writing, and they're going to be asking for whether they would want a general recount, meaning count back all the ballots in the entire district, or if they would want a limited recount. In the case of a limited recount, the returning officer would only be dealing with the rejected ballots and the questioned ballots of those polling stations identified. On the basis of the recount, a new statement of poll is prepared and there is a new declaration. Election offenses. We see we have lots of election offenses. There are actions and practices that are forbidden or prohibited. They are committed during or after the election itself. A voter, a candidate, an election official, or a security personnel, they can be prosecuted. And a person who is found guilty may have to pay a fine or may go to prison, or both. What are some of them? You register to vote, or you try to vote more than once at the same election. You try to vote and you're not qualified to vote. You are a fraud. You're voting for someone who is not you. That person may be dead, fictitious, or not qualified. Another offense, canvassing for voters, molesting them in the 200 yards area, compelling a person to vote in a particular way, attempting to vote before the poll is open, removing or defacing lawfully displayed material, and offering false information for the purposes of being nominated as a candidate. Printing or being in possession of election materials, having unauthorized possession of a ballot box and tampering with its contents. You obstruct and interfere with the work of an election officer. You assist a political party or a candidate to gain unfair advantage. Giving or accepting a bribe. Inciting enmity or hatred against the persons listed there. Or you organize or train persons to use force or violence to commit a breach of the peace. The rules of the observers. Respect the domestic laws of the country. Show respect for the people and the culture of the country. Refrain from interfering or impeding the normal course of the electoral process. Maintain close liaison with the Elections Commission. Inform the Elections Commission of the objectives of your observation mission. Next slide, please. You exercise particular caution when issuing public statements reflecting upon the Elections Commission. You respect the role and the status and authority of election officials, and you exhibit a respectful and courteous attitude to them. Obtain proper accreditation and supply information as required for that purpose. Refrain from attempting without permission to provide guidance or information to persons involved in the electoral process. Refrain from announcing election results without the authority of the Elections Commission. Report to the relevant authorities all criminal activities relevant to the elections. You provide the Elections Commission with copies of written information or statements you may have. You act in a strictly neutral and unbiased manner in relation to the Elections Commission. You disclose any relationship you would have with any relevant stakeholder that may be deemed a conflict of interest. You refrain from accepting any gifts from parties or persons involved. Refrain from any action which indicates or is capable of being as indicating partisan support. You refrain from expressing views on subjects which are likely to be issues at the elections. Refrain from taking part in functions of activities which could lead to perceptions of you being biased. In the case of individuals, refrain from wearing party symbols or colors. Next slide. You attempt to obtain a valid view of all aspects of the electoral process. Attempt to obtain a valid view of the way the electoral process has progressed in all parts of the country. Consult widely with stakeholders. Undertake an analysis of the legal framework in which the election is being conducted. Endeavor to determine whether the actions for the Elections Commission are impartial and consistent with substantially free and fair elections. Endeavor to determine whether there is respect for freedom of expression. Endeavor to observe political meetings and demonstrations. Endeavor to determine whether voters have sufficient knowledge of the process. Endeavor to determine the equity and comprehensiveness of the registry of voters, candidates, and parties, and endeavor to determine whether effective mechanisms are implemented to prevent multiple voting and to guarantee the secrecy and security of the ballot. You endeavor to deploy your observers at counting centers and at polling stations where you see voting going on and the results being compiled. You endeavor to examine and assess the validity of complaints made to you. And at the commencement of your operations, you identify the objectives of your observation. In all of your reporting, identify the exact information that you have gathered. If there's statistical information, state your basis for sampling and the measures of uncertainty associated with them. Identify the assumptions that you would have made. Next slide. Take all the necessary steps to ensure that all information gathered and conveyed to others as part of the observation process is based on first-hand information. And in respect of any allegations which reflect adversely on the Elections Commission, obtain the response of the impugned party before treating such allegations as valid. Your rights and privileges: you have access to polling stations, counting venues, and the Elections Commission as well as its local offices. You obtain official information about the country and elections from all election officials, so long as the information is factual, public, and within official knowledge. You attend meetings convened for the briefing of election observers or any other purpose. Receive cooperation from election officials within the law. Speak or communicate with any person at any place outside the polling station on matters concerned with the election or any other matter. Communicate with any person inside the polling station other than the voter, but in such a case, you must obtain permission from the presiding officer, and it should not interfere with the flow of the poll. Next slide. You can attend campaign rallies and such like functions. You're protected by political parties against exposure to insult, hazard, or threat. You can seek protection and security from the Guyana Police Force while in Guyana. Inform the Guyana elections promptly of any irregularities that may affect the credibility of the elections or prejudice the electoral process. And of course, at all times, you wear the Elections Commission Observer's official badge or other official identification once you are accredited. The Code of Conduct, ethical and professional responsibility of observers, they are summarized and is understood by each observer to guide your behavior. You will act strictly in a neutral manner. You will not act in a manner that is prejudicial to our election system. Any relationships formed by you and other individuals must be immediately disclosed. You will make inquiries and gather information. You will not obstruct or attempt to countermand decisions. You will not disrupt or interfere with the election process. And in reporting, you will give way to positive actions as well as irregularities. Any irregularities found should be reported for appropriate action. Findings will be based on verifiable factual evidence. You will adhere to the rules for media contact. Your information disclosed will be accurate, and at all times be mindful of your personal safety and not needlessly endanger the safety of others. I thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Passad, for such a comprehensive and informative presentation. I know it is quite a lot of information for you to absorb, but I want to encourage you to follow with the manuals that you've received via registration. For those of you who are more digitally inclined, they're accessible in the resource hub on our website, as well as through sure, and through videos on our YouTube channel, Facebook, and for those of you who are following us on our WhatsApp channel. We'll also make this presentation available to you, as well as a detailed guidance note that will be shared with you by the Chief Election Officer. Thank you very much again, Mr. Passad. Mr. Passad has been leading the training of the polling day officials as well as our management team. So he is part of this information. Thank you so much. Very critical to this process, of course, is the tabulation of votes. And so we have a very comprehensive presentation as well on that aspect. And so now I'll invite the Deputy Chief Election Officer, Mr. Anil Giddins, to take you through that aspect. Please hold your questions. You will have the opportunity to ask your questions or any concerns you may have. But let's have these presentations over with. I ask you to make a note and we'll take your questions at the end. DCO, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yolanda. Could I ask that the presentation be on display, please? Esteemed colleagues, invitees, Madam Chair, Chief Election Officer, consultants, ComSec, UNDP. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present to you this morning on the critical aspect after the close of poll, after the count of votes polled, and the transmission of documents to offices of supernumerary returning officers or returning officers. I got a quick one for you. A quick one. Why did the observer take a ladder to the polling station? Anybody? They wanted to ensure that the process was high and above board. I thought that was funny. Ladies and gentlemen, my presentation will focus on statements of poll. And Mr. Nardio was very dramatic when he said the word statement of poll earlier. The transmission of results from the polling station all the way through to the person that is to declare it, whether that be the SRO or RO, the ascertainment process that obtains at those offices, the declaration, and further, what the Chief Election Officer is required to do in allocating seats to the National Assembly. Mr. Nardio spoke about statements of poll. For those of you who don't recognize this document, a specimen is before you. That is a statement of poll for the general elections. This document has seen some minor tweaks, but it's nonetheless more or less the same as at previous elections. My colleague spoke about packages, but just to rehash, the important packages that will be transmitted by the presiding officer to returning officers through deputy returning officers. And I wouldn't want to repeat supernumerary and all of that. So when I refer to a deputy returning officer, I mean a deputy supernumerary returning officer. So the returning officers package, also the SROs package in those in regions 3, 4, and 6, will contain envelopes PE. PE means polling envelope 11, 12, and 13. In 13, that will contain the statements of poll, one for the general election and one for the regional election, as well as those tally sheets that were used by the staff of the polling station. The chairman's and CEO's package, they are identical, and they will contain much less documents, nonetheless important, statements of poll, and the accounts for ballot papers and those statements of poll. Other packages that need to be secured, that will not be transmitted directly to the ROs, that may be stored in secured locations, staging areas that we will have set up across the country, include the poll bag, the ballot box, and another element that we have introduced in this election, a secure receptacle. This receptacle will contain all the other envelopes, things like the counterfoils and unused ballots and all of those things will be stored in the secure receptacle. Now, I thought it best to do a flow relating to the movement of the statements of poll. So we start with the presiding officer. Obviously, you know, the presiding officer prepares, certifies, packages those documents, and transmits same to his or her deputy returning officer. That DRO will then obviously receive all of the packages from a cluster in which he or she has responsibility for. DROs usually will have a responsibility for between 9 and 14 polling stations. We call that a cluster of polling stations. So let's say I'm a DRO, I will receive packages from 10 presiding officers in Subdistrict 4. Subdistrict 1 of District 4, sorry. I will then be required to transmit that to my boss, either the RO or the supernumerary RO, who will then obviously receive it, ensure that the packages for the chairman and the CEO are also delivered to them at headquarters at the most opportune time or with immediacy. The first thing that the RO or SRO needs to do is to ensure that they verify the contents of PE2 containing 11, 12, and 13 and do some logging. Person handing over, which would be a DRO, will sign. Person receiving, quite likely a DRO or DRO at that office. They go into the PE13 and extract the statements of poll therein. And there's a system deployed that will be deployed at each of those officers' offices that will see the scanning and uploading to the website. So as soon as practicable after receipt, I would say immediately, they are scanned and uploaded to the website. This website is publicly available. It's updated in real time. So the entire world will be seeing what has been received by the RO. there's a process of a verification of those documents, those statements of poll. The verification includes a cursory check to determine whether there are any material errors evident on such statement. Accuracy in this case means the discovery or not of a material error. Materials error includes missing information or whether the numbers there, a quick look at them, do not necessarily add back to the totals that are required in the middle column. So that would fall under the category of a material error. If there are material errors discovered on any of the statements of poll, the RO or the SRO is required to summon the presiding officer to correct same. And this is done in the presence of agents there at the office. If there are no statements or if the statements are accurate, then or statements have been corrected, they are queued for ascertainment. So at some appointed time, the process commences. Now, this will vary from district to district, depending on the geography, depending on how statements are received and when. It could happen anywhere from between 10 p.m. in the night all the way into the next morning, very early. To commence, point to note is that there is no need for us to wait until the entirety of statements of poll have been received in order to commence. There shall be a separation where the RO may assign a DRO the responsibility to receive while he or she is conducting the ascertainment. And I like to use the word ascertainment because that is what the law speaks to, but I know colloquially we like to say tabulation. So this is the tabulation process. So what happens at tabulation? Now, I'll run you through the process and I'll also show you what it looks like in the next slide. So the first statement of poll is displayed on a screen to the left, and on a screen to the right, there is displayed the tabulation form. In the case of districts 3, 4, and 6, that would be a sub-district tabulation form. It is a spreadsheet that has listed there all of the ballot boxes belonging to the particular district or sub-district. The first SOP is displayed, and the RO or the SRO would commence the announcement of the figures from that which is displayed on screen. While those figures are being announced, a data entry clerk or another assigned staff will be manning a computer that will be displaying the tabulation form in which those figures are going to be seen concomitant with its announcement. Upon the completion of the entry, the entire row, I think the last value on the statement of poll is total number of tendered ballot issued. Am I correct, Mr. Nardio? Total tendered ballots issued. The RO shall pause to hear or receive a thumbs up from those agents present as to whether there are any objections or not to this statement. As Mr. Nardio said, the RO is required not to proceed to the next statement of poll until all of the objections or queries or concerns have been addressed. At that point, there is a capture of that image of that statement of poll, and it is stored, and the process is repeated until the completion of all of the statements for the district or sub-district. Now, this has to be a process that caters to all of the general election statements of poll and then the regional or vice versa. But I think the intention is to ensure that we don't switch between general, then regional, general, then regional. That you complete an entire component, there will be separate district tabulation forms for both. After the process is complete, it will culminate in a district or sub-district tabulation form, which has to be then printed, and certified by the RO or SRO, at which point he or she will declare the results of those elections in his or her district or sub-district, distribute copies of those documents to persons present and authorized to receive same, and then deliver those results to either the CEO or the RO. The RO in the case of those sub-districts. Now, at the office of the returning officer for 3, 4, and 6, they will be required to receive sub-district tabulation forms, which will go through a similar process of display and tabulation. So every district will generate, certify, and distribute a district tabulation form, which will then be delivered to the chief election officer for his stage of the process. This is what it will likely look like at those offices. As a matter of fact, for your information, this particular room is the center that the supernumerary returning officer of North Georgetown, Subdistrict 3 of District 4, shall do that process. You see, as you can see, you have two screens, one left displaying the statement of poll, and on the right, you have the tabulation form. You have the RO there announcing the figures. We will employ the use of a document camera under which the statement of poll will be placed and then displayed on the left-hand display. The data entry clerk also will be in front of a computer that is connected to the right screen, and all of the agents, duly appointed candidates, and quite likely yourselves will be present. So after this process is complete, we have to now move the process to the office of the chief election officer, who is required to, by law, prepare a report in manual and electronic form, including a report of the allocation of seats to the National Assembly. And I forgot to mention that the responsibility for allocation of seats to regional democratic councils is that of the returning officer, who will then deliver those results, those allocations, to the chief election officer. So the chief election officer report, his report shall contain allocation of seats to the National Assembly, to regional democratic councils, and a report of the using the district tabulation forms that have been delivered to him, to the chairman and the commission. Now, I want to use an illustrative example to go through how seats are allocated. I think this is very important. So, as Mr. Nardio alluded to earlier, parties gain seats in proportion to the number of votes cast for them under the proportional representation method. And it stands to reason under that method, under that system, if a party wins 40% of the votes cast in an election, then they should receive 40% of the seats available for such an election. So in this example, let's just say that we have a parliament with 5 seats. And these are the results of the elections. Party A gained 40% of the votes. They are allocated 2 seats. Party B, 35%, they will receive 2 seats. And Party D, with 20% of the votes, will receive the final seat. Unfortunate for Party C, who has not made the cut. Now, how is this done? How do we determine that 40% equates to 2 and 35 equates to 2? We employ the use of the Hare quota. Now, a Hare quota, some of you may know it as a simple quota, the Hamilton quota, the largest remainder quota, or the largest remainder method. It's a simple method that is exactly the number of votes a party needs to be guaranteed a seat. And how that is calculated, you divide the total number of valid votes cast for all parties' lists of candidates by the number of seats available, giving you the electoral quota. Now, for our example, let's move on. We have a parliament with 65 seats. We have an election in which 200,000 valid votes have been polled and ascertained, and the number of geographical constituencies are 4. The electoral quota calculated in this example equates to 3,076.92. When we check the results, Party A received 67,917, and the numbers are there before you. We calculated the quota to be 3,076.92. And so using Party A as an illustration, we find that dividing the total votes received, valid votes received for that party, divided by the quota equates to 22.07. The 0.07 is important. This party has automatically acquired 22 seats with a remainder of 0.07. As we move on, similarly, Party B got 35 with a remainder of 0.73, and Party C 7 seats with a remainder of 0.2. Now, if we sum 22 plus 35 plus 7, we get 64, but we're looking for 65. Where does the other seat come from? Quite simple, the party with the largest remainder. Evidently so, Party B receives the extra seat, thereby allocating 65 seats in the National Assembly. Now, the Representation of the People Act and our electoral system caters to, as mentioned earlier, geographical constituencies. And you've all heard the term geographical constituency lists and national top-up lists. So there must be some form of calculation done to determine who the persons are, how many seats are to come from the geographical constituencies and the remainder coming from the national top-up lists. So this is a bit longer and greater calculation we have to do. The same principle applies. Total number of valid votes divided by the total number of seats available, establish an electoral quota, and find the seats using the whole and remainder calculations. So we end up here. Could we remove the picture-in-picture, please? So we have 4 geographical constituencies. And we found that those are the totals that summate to 200,000 valid votes cast. The seats available to each geographical constituency are, for this example, 6, 9, 7, and 3. And I should say that, well, just to clarify, for this election, we have 10 geographical constituencies, each of which have a specific number of seats as per the Act. In our Act, we have 6, 9, 7, and 3. So I put up some figures there, random numbers that these parties would have acquired in the geographical constituencies. And for each, we have totals, which will then help us to ascertain the quota for each geographical constituency. When we do the math, just like we did earlier, we found that these are the seats that were allocated in terms of whole numbers. In this case, we are trying to allocate 25 seats. But when I look at the bottom, I find that we have only allocated 19. How much we left back with, Nar? 6. So again, we find the remainders. And we allocate the additional seats. We found that actually Party A got 4 of the remaining seats. Party B got 1. And Party C, finally, they got 1. That being said, we have now determined the quantum of seats that will be allocated as per geographical constituency, totaling to 25. We have 40 seats remaining. Simple arithmetic. Total number of seats for Party A, 22. It means that they won 10 from geo allocations. The remaining 12 comes from the national top-up list. As you can see there, we have allocated from geo 25, from national top-up, the remaining 40, some 65 seats in that parliament. My presentation was not as long as Mr. Nardio. I didn't bore you guys, did I? That brings me to the end of the process of allocation of seat transmission of results, allocation of seats. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DCO. I saw smiling faces there with that presentation. Yes, we've upgraded, so we're technologically inclined. So that tabulation process will be highly visible to all of you in the room. Before I entertain your questions, I would also like to point out that during the days of election and the days following, we will have a media center established that will be operational on a 24 hours basis. And so observers will be welcome to visit that media center for our briefings, which will be, you will receive notification in a timely manner when those briefings will be held, but it's also a working space for observers. Because as you know, as provided for in the amendment to the Representation of the People Act, those statement of polls will be uploaded to the website. So you can use that as well to follow along as the process unfolds. So I now invite your questions. Our CEO is here. He's not quiet, but he's allowed the technical experts to give you those presentations. But he's here to answer the very tough questions you may have. So let's offload those tough questions on him. That's what he's here for. So over to you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I may. Good morning. Thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. What I didn't hear is something which should probably be on the minds of every single Guyanese. We didn't hear any reference to time. And so my question is, what measures have been put in place, if any, that will make the time between the completion of polls and the availability of the results compressed from the weeks to perhaps a day or two? What measures have been put in place to compress that time, which everybody has agreed should not be that long for a population of less than 1 million? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, sir, for that question. Let me, at the outset, make it known that the law affords us 15 days for the preparation and declaration of the results of the election. So I need to say that first and foremost. Secondly, I need to acknowledge that we are now going to be using a brand new process pertaining to the tabulation of the votes at the level of the supernumerary returning officer and returning officer. We envisage that that process will take, for each statement of poll, 7 to 10 minutes. And if you, well, I would assume that you have not checked. What is required first and foremost is that we are required to, upon receipt, to immediately publish, well, scan and publish the statement of poll on the website. And that there's one aspect, one section of the law that provides for that. After that has been completed, it is only then that we will proceed to do the actual tabulation. So I'm providing this as a backdrop to tell you that the process is a twofold one now. That obviously impacts timing insofar as completion and declaration of the results is concerned. We do not envisage at the level of the district that the declaration will go beyond the night of the day after the election, which in this case is September 2nd. However, I want to make it lucidly clear that the law requires that we do not move from one statement of poll to the other until all of the persons who are authorized to be there is satisfied with the inputting of the information from the statement of poll into the spreadsheet, and that in itself carries potential for the delay in the processing of the results or the tabulation of the results. So I'm saying this to tell you what is possible. Again, having said all of that, we hope that we will not run into these humbugs because, or especially because there will be more than one persons authorized to be there who will be in original copies of the statement of poll. So we will be able to establish whether in fact the statement of poll on display is accurate or not, so that we can move forward in an alacritized manner.
Good morning. I just have two questions. One, how do the observers get to vote? Because we'll be doing work. The other part is, what is the probability of the same number being drawn, that unique number being drawn, and it is repeated in polling stations? So why I'm asking this, I deal with fraud, and it's just asking a question.
So, thank you for the questions. I'll deal with the issue of voting by observers first. GCOM has absolutely no control over the timings and movement of observers. Mr. and Miss Observer, you will determine your own timings as to how you will vote once you have satisfied yourself that you want to satisfy your desire to vote. On the case of the other question, let me assure you that it has never happened in the past that we have had a case of two polling station having the same number. And I know someone will want to come up with a position that nobody never know that they are going to have the numbers that the lotto will deliver. We have never had the cause to do that. And even the point is, at the stage when that number is established, no one will know whether a similar number has been established at another polling station across the country.
And just for some mathematical calculation, the probability is 1 in 810 billion. That's the probability. I think you asked the probability, right, sir? All right. 1 in 810 billion. That's a chance.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm asking this question on behalf of the observers from the Guyana Bar Association. We appreciated the indication of the display of the SOPs and the display of the tally sheet from the Deputy CEO. What I was wondering, what would be the proximity of the observers and the other persons to actually see what was being displayed. And I won't say anything more on the capacity to observe because I need not. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So let me start out by pointing out that the law requires that the setting be of such that all of the persons who are authorized to be there have they're allowed to easily see and recognize that which is displayed. And it is especially because of that that we have purchased 55-inch display screens. And the statements of poll will be shown on those screens to the maximum capacity.
Thank you very much.
Anybody there?
Mr. Suban at the back of me. No, right here. I'm right for it.
Thank you very much.
Morning, CEO. Ashton Simon is my name, and this would be my second um, observing general elections in Guyana. I don't want to feel that you threw me under the bus just now when you said the observers are on their own, doing what they have to do and so. But I would like some provision to be made for the committed observers, because the observer that you talk about just now is just random, coming anytime. But I'm a committed observer, and committed mean I get up 4 o'clock in the morning because I know I have to be at the poll station at 6. All right, and I should be given the observer should be given some, if I want to say, status of going to that polling station, speaking with the relevant authority that will be sitting there and say, listen, I'm an observer. I wish I can have an early access to the voting place so I can vote and leave and go and do my duty. If that can be provided for observers, I'd be very happy. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So at the outset, let me say that we have a policy in place that allows for a human approach to treating with persons with disabilities and elderly and pregnant people and all of this. And so we do that. On the other hand, with specific reference to you as a committed observer, then please commit yourself to be the first in line. And you certainly will be allowed to vote first.
Good morning. Just clarity. The voter education program over the years, and even now, I believe, would have mentioned that the X in whichever box has to be in the box and should not be touching the size of the boxes. But we have seen differently over the years where it will touch the side of the box. But are we going to say that, look, for the observer's purposes, that where the X intersect, wherever it intersects, that is where the vote will be? Or is there some stringent rule that says it must be not touching the size of the box?
Thank you, Niaz. In fact, the point of intersection of the X in the box, it must be in the box. That counts as a valid vote.
Thanks for that. And secondly, quickly,
If I can add also, so sorry, if I can add, I think we've seen more than X's before, stars, ticks, circles, all kind of thing. Our presiding officers are trained to make a determination. If the intention of the voter is clear, then that vote shall be awarded in favor of whatever party is clear to them.
well, thank you
Right.
for that, because it's the intention that matters.
The intention is what matters. They are guided and instructed to vote using an X within the boundaries of the box. Many persons don't follow guidance pretty well. So that is the guidance given at the COM to our presiding officers.
And finally,
If I may, we will be providing the polling day staff as well as the party agents with exemplars of valid and invalid ballots so that they are guided if and when they run into such a situation.
Thank you. And again, just for clarity, if you were to go back to the screen where you mentioned just now that the SOPs will be uploaded to the website almost immediately, if I'm paraphrasing, but then a couple processes after that, or a couple steps after that, is when the tabulation is going to be done, or the verification, whichever one is used interchangeably. If there are changes that develop during that tabulation, but the SOPs has already been posted, how is that addressed?
So in that regard, the law authorizes the CEO upon receipt of the corrected statement of poll to replace the incorrect statement of poll.
One more question. Look at one of the two gentlemen says and 200 yard radio from that polling station. I get every project that's not written, probably not done. Not yet typically. I get there, no, in the current house, that's why my strengths need this to that case.
The answer is no, and I'll give you an example why that is not possible. Because in many of the cases, the polling station itself is only about 20 feet away from the road where people has to pass. So it's not practical to apply that 200 marking, that 200-yard marking. What we know is that the party agents, the policeman who will be stationed there, and our staff, the polling day staff, they are aware of this boundary issue and they are informed that they are to, as far as practicable, and with the help of the police rank who is stationed here, to ensure that no political activity is conducted within that space, and when of course it has to do with maintenance of order also. And because the parties also notice, even if parties are wanted to engage in some political activity, as has happened in the past, they themselves ensure that they set up their activity out of the range of the polling station by maintaining that 200 yards.
Analogy, but the problem is the law. I am talking if somebody is 210 degree versus somebody in 200. There's nothing written. There's nothing. It's like an understand. I mean 250, and it is really 150. Not just my to convict somebody of being not.
Thank you, sir. But let me assure the intention here is not to convict anyone. The intention here is simply to maintain peace in and around the polling station.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Dawn Stewart. My question is, I looked at a slide from the first presenter, and he eloquently stated the protection for our international observers. But maybe I could be interpreting it incorrectly, but I didn't see anything stating that the local observers would also have the same protection. So I just need to have that clarified so we would feel comfortable that we would be able to use the police and whatever else we need to do just the same way as the international observers.
Thank
I
you.
thank you.
Protection will be applied indiscriminately.
To all of
I'm here with the mic, sir. I'm here first. My question to you, Mr. CEO, I'll follow up from my colleague over there first. When he talked about the 200 radius. Now, as an observer, I am going to the polling place where there are a number of stations, and I observe something, to my mind, is illegal. Who should I report to immediately? Should I go to the police or should I go to one of the presiding officers? That's one question. My second question is the DCU in his presentation, he talks about the expectations of the observers. When he talk about it, he give the scenario of the ladder. I agree with him. But we are experiencing a number of power outages. What system GCOM has in place as it relates to the new electronic systems that would be in place in the event of a power outage during the process. I know GCOM usually give lamps and candles and all of these things, but now we're moving into electronic. What system GCOM has in place is their backup generators at each center. My final question for now, I also heard in one of the presentations we talk about agents can put their seals on the envelopes. I haven't heard of agents putting their seals on the ballot boxes. And you also, during the presentations, there were some introduction of another means, which we talk about the poll bag, we talk about the ballot boxes, and there is some other ways in securing some other documents. Can you give some clarity on that for me?
I hope I can remember all the questions.
Well, I will remind you if you don't.
Oh, so I think your first question was whether you witnessed something untoward, my word, and who you should report to. My response, the first one, if what you witness is a matter of a criminal nature, then you report it to the police. If it's something that has to do with the manner in which the election process is unfolding, report it to the presiding officer. In the case of power, there is no requirement for the use of any electronic gadget to process statements of polls at the level of the polling station. So our lamps will be sufficient to take care of that should there be a blackout, as you call it. At the higher level, I have been in contact with the head of Guyana Power and Light. In fact, I have written him, providing him with the location of all of the places where we will be doing tabulation and requesting that as far as is practicable, we should not lose power. That apart, we are putting in place to have not one but two standby generator in case one fails at every tabulation location. So agents are allowed to put their seals on the envelopes as well as ballot boxes. This is a provision, this is entitlement that we have always facilitated, and there is no reason why that will be denied. In fact, we encourage the agents. It helps us as the implementers to see the integrity of the contents of these containers are intact.
I recognize. Good morning.
Hi.
I have a few questions. We have quite a few persons joining us online. So if you can allow me, I have 4 questions, some fed from persons that are joining us remotely. In terms of, this is a follow-up to one of our Commissioner Simon's question. In relation to voting for observers, is the employment certificate, could that be activated if we want to send our observers into remote locations? Because of the terrain and getting persons there, flights become a challenge. So,
There is nothing in law that authorizes us to do that.
okay, so that wouldn't be permitted. In terms of a follow-up to Commissioner Suban's question of the voting with the X, and there's some information that the ERC has come across where persons have been misleading the public as to ensure that your X touches all of the edges of a box. And in the election offenses pamphlet, I see that misleading voters is one of those offenses. What is the leeway prior to the elections that those are enforced, and what could be done if those are noted?
First of all, we have always said, and we are saying now, pay attention and follow guidance provided only by the Guyana Elections Commission. You can rest assured that the information that is provided by us is accurate, is compliant with the statutory provisions and the policy decisions of the Commission. Well, repeat your second question, please.
So that very question, the offense, if it is noted, who would that be reported to?
So depending on the nature, again, depending on the nature of the offense, you can report it to the presiding officer. Bear in mind that you would be required to provide evidence of that thing when the need arises, because it will definitely be investigated. The presiding officer will not leave his or her post at the police station to go and investigate whatever it is might be occurring.
Thank you. So that is clear for election day. So prior to election, if this kind of information is seen circulating online, misleading voters, should we also report that to GCOM as an offense? Is it categorized?
So I tell you what, GCOM is the implementer insofar as the conduct of election is concerned. GCOM does not have investigative capacity to deal with those things. So, and in saying that, we're not saying that you should not report it to GCOM. The first thing I would advise is to report it to the police. And if you were to bring it to our attention, the next step we will do is to put it to the police requesting an investigation.
Okay, and my final question, can you say in terms of congregating within or just beyond that 200 yards mark that GCOM indicates? I know the offenses says specifically for political parties, but if voters are accumulating or congregating in that area and intimidating, is there measures put in place by GCOM?
So I did mention that there is a police rank at every polling station. This matter would have to be brought to our attention. And let me go a bit further. In every district, we will be having deputy returning officers responsible for a cluster of polling stations. These are people who we can access to make an intervention in a preliminary way. But I can also assure you that we have access to patrols, police patrols in those areas that we can call upon to come and intervene should there be any occurrence which appears to have potential to get out of hand.
Thank you very much.
We have a question at front.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really helpful presentations. I have a few questions. Firstly, in terms of the polling centres, polling stations and the tabulation centres, are they on the GCOM website or when will that happen?
50 centimeters plus.
Really? They list the four.
No, they're not.
They're not there yet.
But please be guided by a response now that since you have raised it, we will definitely be putting up.
Okay, great. Next question. You've been very clear. The polling station opens at 6 a.m. and closes at 6 p.m. What if there's a delay? Will there be a delay in opening or delay in getting things started? Will there be a delay to the closure?
The answer is no. There is no the only condition under which we can go beyond 6 o'clock is whether there are still persons in the line to vote, and in most cases, as we have seen, the voting closes off way before 6 o'clock. Yes, there may be people who are voters who might get off from work late or for whatever reason makes it late to the polling station. If there's a line, yes, they will vote, but with specific reference to the question, there is no provision for an extension beyond 6 o'clock.
That's really clear. Thank you. My final question is, well, I'm British, so I love queuing. But in my vehicle, I will have local staff, and I do want them to have to vote. And we'll go around and make sure they go to their relevant places, polling stations to vote. Is there any provision for them to be moved up the queue a little bit, just to enable us as observers to get around different areas quicker?
No, there isn't.
Okay, all right, no,
And if we were to do that, we will run into problems.
that's clear. Thank you very much.
Yes, may I ask my question? Oh, thank you. Yes. The answers just now raise one question, which is bubbling in my mind in terms of your rules of interpretation. Is it that if the law, is it that GCOM interprets the law in the way that if it prohibits what is not prohibited, specifically is allowed, or the converse? For people like me who don't know law, I would be grateful to know what is the consistent rule that you apply. For example, you mentioned the law providing to 15 days or what have you. So that is clearly a maximum. But then there's another question. Is it that how do I predict how you will interpret the law? What is prohibited is clear, but what is not allowed, you get what I'm asking. I might be asking a little clumsy, but you're a lawyer, so you know better than I do. My second question is another 200. You've been using a figure of, you quoted a total of 200,000 votes in a hypothetical situation in your demonstration by the other presenter. And my question is 200,000 votes cast a purely hypothetical figure, or does it have a historical basis? Thank you.
I mean, take the second one first. Take the second one first. Wait, let me do this. Let me assure you, sir, let me assure you first, and I would not make assumptions, but I get the impression that you're not an officer of the law, neither am I. So I needed to clear that first, and I suspect, because I didn't get it clearly, your reference to since the law allows us to 15 days to do the declaration, what might be the inside time? I would not venture a guess. We would have to be guided by how the activities unfold and work with that towards ensuring that we can deliver accurate results within the fastest possible time.
And 200,000 was a number for illustration purposes, sir.
Right. Yes, good morning. My question has to do with statements of polls being posted outside of the polling place. Say hypothetically, they post it at 8:30 and at night, and I come at 10:30 at night, and it's not there. It's not there nowhere. What happens in those situations?
Thank you for the question. If the statement of poll is posted at 8:30 and you go at 10:30 and it's not there, my advice to you, sir, would be to wait a little longer and then go on GCOM website to find that polling statement of poll. Because I would have no clue as to where that statement of poll would have gone on its own or otherwise.
In addition to that, it will be made pellucid closer to the day of election that tearing down of these notices is an offense on the law, and the penalties and so on will be put in place there in the hopes that such an occurrence is mitigated.
And may I add that at every polling station, persons who are authorized to be there, specifically the party agents, they would be in possession of copies of the statements, but they are entitled to copies of the statements of poll. And if perchance you are acquainted with any of those, you may request to view their copies.
Good morning. My name is Bruce. My question is related to the same electronic statement of polls publication. So I know this is something that's new that came out of the amended ROP Act, sorry. I wanted to know specifically what mechanism would be used for the publication of these electronic statement of polls and what security features are implemented to prevent interception by cyber attackers.
All right, you said Bruce, Kieran Bruce? Karen Bruce. Mr. Bruce, let me assure you that were we to go into that, we will have to have another session like we did to get into the technicalities, especially as it relates to security. And moreover, why would I want to disclose the security procedures that we will be using to guarantee the integrity of those statements of poll? Let me assure you that there is a very simple process that we will use to scan and upload to the website and to the display screen that we will be using to do the tabulation. I guarantee you that the security measures that are in place have been put together by our very able DCO. He's a technical, I would say he's an expert, but also with technical input from a very senior technical advisor who has been working along with us under the auspices of the UNDP. And among ourselves, sitting and dealing with these things, we are very comfortable about the security measures in place to protect the integrity of the statements posted.
Hi, morning. On the night of the tabulation at the various centers, what kind of protocols are in place to ensure continued tabulation as opposed to a situation where a returning officer or one of the staff is tired and they want to go home?
Uh, there is no provision. A presiding officer, well, in this case, presiding officer, the level of the polling station. Please be assured that an RO is not even allowed to report sick on a day. But just in case, the law provides that a deputy returning officer is in fact a returning officer, and we have dozens of them around to authorize any one of those who we feel has the competence to assume the responsibilities of the tabulation will be put in place.
And I think in the wisdom of Parliament, their division of large districts into sub-districts will help to reduce the amount of tabulation that has to be done at any single center. So it would be a less arduous task on each of those respective officers.
Go ahead, sir. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the excellent presentations. They were really great. I just have a question as it relates to requesting recounts of various kinds. And can you let us know what sort of instructions will have been given to ROs or DROs about making themselves available to the appropriate party agents to receive requests for recounts? Because those can happen at what's the appropriate manner, and how do they make that connection with them? It could be very late at night or early in the morning, and there's a time limit that they have to meet in terms of noon of the next day. So if you could clarify that, please. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So yes, the possibility of a request for a recount being made, the deadline for that is by noon the day after the recount in our training processes. And one of the instructions that has been given to ROs and SROs is that they must remain in situ up to the point of the deadline for receipt of requests for recounts.
Centimeters.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. clarification on the measurements. 200 yards. We are a metric country, so is that yards or meters?
The law says 200 yards.
Okay. Second would be a recommendation. I believe when we started the chair for the event said that we could offer suggestions for improving the process. A couple of people have brought it up now. We should have some facilitation for observers going forward. Maybe not on this election, but it should be something where we're allowed advance voting so that if we wanted to, let's say, go observe out of region, that we would be able to. For us right now, it would mean that if I were to have to go, let's say, observe in Region 1, I would have to be disenfranchised because I am actually voting, I'm located in Region 4. So I think that's something that we need to look at going forward.
Recommendation noted, sir.
All right. My question is a little bit of a boring one, but it's a follow-up to I think it's Kieran's question in regards to cybersecurity because I work in that space and you did note that the process is very simple to upload, but at the same time simple is very easy to circumvent. So the question would be, was there a third-party audit done? Yes or no, for all cases of transparency?
I wouldn't be able to advise you on whether there's a third party, but there is an ongoing audit. We're auditing ourselves as we go ahead with this thing, just to ensure that we are satisfied at the end of it that the security measures that are in place will deliver the desired results.
You're right again. Our time is up, so we're going to some websites. First, my boys and girls, grade 5, goodbye teachers, and goodbye rare. Thanks.
Are there other questions? I recognize the welcome.
I'm sorry to bother you, but I am still a little troubled because I don't think that I expressed myself clearly with regard to the question. It is too fundamental an issue for there not to be clarity on. My question, given what you said earlier and how you interpreted the law, is very simple. If you want to know whether I can bring tonic water in the polling booth, and you check, and the law does not prevent me from bringing tonic water, would you interpret that to mean that I am allowed, therefore, to bring tonic water because the law does not prevent it? There are two ways of interpreting the law as far as I'm aware. One is that way, and the other one, in other words, what is not forbidden is allowed. And you have the converse. Which way is GCOM interpreting the laws? Am I clear? I don't know how well to put it. Maybe somebody who knows the English language better than I can help me out, because I'm sure you sense what I'm trying to ask. Because the chairperson mentioned earlier, when he referenced the law, he said there is nothing in the law that allows that. So that is the clear implication I got, that if the law did not specifically allow it, you cannot do it. So that is what I'm asking. Is that what is your general rule? If the law does not specifically allow it, you will not entertain it.
The answer is yes.
That's what I want to hear.
That's it. All right.
You children.
To the chair. I came here this morning to be enlightened, to help Guyana going forward. I'm not here to bust your guys' chops. I am with you. So I know sometimes when you come forward and you answer some questions, it might sound uh, pointedly brute, but that's why you're up there and we're here. We are following you. I am supporting you. So please don't get me wrong when I'm asking questions because I don't like, I'm a chess player. I do not like check, check. I like checkmate. That's how I am. That's why I've survived on this earth 70 and 10.
So much.
Microphone.
On the question of tonic water in the law, I am a lawyer, but I didn't understand the question to be a legal question. But I just like to confirm, I have been a presiding officer for GCOM on 2 occasions. Somebody came in with a drink in their hand. Now, there's no law or not on it, but I didn't want them to throw away that drink on the ballot paper and have me to write up more forms. So I said, could you please put that down? When you come back out, you'll collect it back. And I'm assuming that presiding officers have the discretion in the polling station to make that sort of decision to protect the sanctity of the environment. I don't know if that answers the question about the tonic.
You are absolutely correct. And in fact, only this morning I finished putting together a flyer that will be out in circulation very soon, in which we will be providing a desk next to the polling compartment, asking people to free your hands by resting anything that you may have, a bag or whatever, on that desk before you go into the polling compartment to cast your ballot.
They gave me permission to speak again. I just wanted to say this, that as an observer having come to this briefing, this is one of the most positive feelings of preparation for an elections that we have experienced. I have, and I think I share the sentiments of everyone here, that we've experienced in a very, very long time. We congratulate you for the indicated preparation, and we look forward to continued success in the execution of what you've promised us. But this level of preparation has not been communicated in the past, and we sincerely appreciate it. So thank you.
You. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been a great audience. I hope that we have met your expectations. And as I've mentioned before, I know that it's information overload with all the presentations, but we have agreed to share those presentations with you. You have the manuals with there as a guidance note, as well as the videos and infographics and all of that that are available via the resource hub on our website, as well as um, our Facebook page. We also have a WhatsApp channel, so feel free to follow us there and now streaming via our YouTube channel as well. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us at any time. You have any concerns, any questions, this forum has ended, but we want to ensure that you have clarity as you conduct your duties. I think the CEO has one final remark before we officially close this session.
Thank you, PRO. Esteemed observers, I just wanted to make this closing comment. For those of you who might have already interacted with the Secretariat, I expect that you would agree with me that we have been 100% open and accommodating insofar as facilitating you from our end to fulfill your role as an observer. Please be assured of this continued level of collaboration from our end, all with a view to ensure that you can fulfill your responsibilities as observers. Thank you.
Just to note that those who are not yet in receipt of badges, badges are under production. Soon you would receive that information to come and uplift.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much and do have a pleasant rest of your day. Remember, Discipline Services balloting is on Friday, the 22nd. So I look forward to seeing you out in your numbers.
Let me get back to my new paper.